do some independent thinking for the things that matter. Like you work your whole life for money, right? At least understand how money is made, where it's going, and how you can make more of it and invest. I think that's just the basics that people need to learn.
100%. And that, like, if you're holding cash in your bank, you're losing, I think, at least 10%, per year, real true inflation. So gold has always been seen as this hedge against inflation, right? Gold's only up 7 to 10% year to date in US dollar terms, only up 11% in the last 4 or 5 years in US dollar terms. Not even gold is outpacing inflation, which is crazy, right? So Bitcoin, although volatile, is right now one of the only very few things that I'd consider a genuine hedge against the debasement of currency. Welcome back to another episode of the Ben Bergs podcast. I'm Ben, your favorite high school dropout and founder of Collective Shift. Alongside me is Bergs, your favorite MBA and COO of Collective Shift. Join us as we bring you world-class crypto research and strategies to help you dominate this crypto bull market, as well as a behind-the-scenes view of us scaling a fully remote subscription research business here in Australia. If you like the podcast, we'd love you to leave a subscribe or share it with a friend. That's how we grow the podcast each and every week without advertising coming to you in your ears. Because today, Bergs, we've got the Bitcoin halving has just surpassed the latest block about a half an hour ago. We're up to the new reward of... I'm going to stuff it up. What's the new reward?
3.125 Bitcoin. So we've gone from about 400K USD to 200K USD per block.
And that happened as a recording about 30 minutes ago, which is super exciting. So you can see this live on the blockchain, which is super cool. We can basically see when the block transferred from 6.25 BTC to 3.125 BTC. And basically, Bergs, now all the miners are going to get half the revenue.
Sucked in, lads.
Good for investors, bad for business.
This is interesting where, things are going to have to adjust where miners may not be profitable now and they were profitable 40 minutes ago. And now it's just halved. So, hey, it's got to build in inflation or difficulty needs to adjust. Miners will come in or they'll leave. There's a lot of incentives at play here.
What's so fascinating is that we did some data digging recently into Bitcoin versus gold versus inflation. And we're in this period at the moment, we're in a bit of a correction. We're up, 20, 30% correction and getting a lot of messages about, what's going on. Wow, our portfolio's down. Wow, shit, is crypto over? All this sorts of stuff. And I think there's a couple of things to unpick here. One is that altcoins are down 40 or 50% from all-time highs. I think Solana's probably down 50% from its all-time highs, for example. Recently it's down to $140 at time of recording. It got as high as... When do we get to? Yeah, $200. So, you're sort of talking down 30, 40% from all-time highs. If you're holding majority altcoins in your portfolio, of course your portfolio is going to be hurt in the short term. That's why we always talk about holding majority BTC and ETH. Nothing to panic about. Nothing fundamentally has changed. These is very normal, these corrections in bull markets. In fact, the last bull market we had, and I've spoken this a number of times before, we actually had 13 10% plus corrections in the last bull market. Some corrections were down to 30 or 40%. It's very normal. Things get very frothy. They get very euphoric. A lot of people are longing the top of the cycle, top of the market, and they need to get washed out. We need to have a reset. We had 6 continuous green months of Bitcoin in a row, which is pretty much unheard of, and it needs to be flushed out. And these are great buying opportunities. We've also got the war going on, which is absolutely awful what's happening, but ultimately that will affect Bitcoin prices. And fundamentally, why, we had this question in the Platinum group recently, like, why does Bitcoin go down when there's, a war going on? Well, I mean, ultimately there's a lot of uncertainty and markets don't like uncertainty. But also there's a not a warning, but there's a concern that if the war continues on, it could drive up oil prices, and with higher oil prices, it could drive cost of living up and inflation goes up. And then, we have the US maybe not cut rates. They might increase rates. They might keep them as is, which means it's harder to get money, which means money doesn't find risk on assets like Bitcoin. So it's like this domino effect of, what's happening on the ground in real life, and then how the flow-on effect, goes down right down to Bitcoin. But fundamentally, Bergs, nothing's changed.
We get this question all the time, and people that have come into the market recently or our members will be like, hey, what's your take on what's happening? And the entire chain that you just explained there, that domino effect, just kick off with the first thing where I think it might have been Israel and Iran fired some rockets at each other. And they're like, oh no, the war's kicking off. Think about that for a moment. Let that marinate, that statement, what you're envisaging in your head, what's actually happening, what kind of state you're in. You're like, you feel, oh no, there's war, things are escalating, I'm anxious, I'm nervous, oh no, what's the next thing that's going to happen? And you start to go, and the next thing, and the next thing. And you apply that kind of negative mindset to everything down the chain to try and come to a future outcome. And really what we're talking about is, why has Bitcoin gone down? It is because there are humans behind it, humans investing in it, and humans having that mindset that can potentially be, negative and be like, no, I need to hold on to this money because everything's going to zero. I need money to survive. I need to be able to look after my family. And you're spot on when you say, fundamentally with Bitcoin, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed at all. You need to zoom out. And even with what you mentioned earlier with Solana, people like, it's down 40% from, $200. Let's just take a longer term view. Let's look at a year ago. A year ago, Solana was $20. $20. It hit 200 and now it's 140. You're up 7x from just 1 year. Even more if you go back further, right? So whenever you've got these thoughts and whenever you're thinking about, oh no, this has happened, that has happened, why has it happened? If there's any fundamental change in the network or a cryptocurrency or whatever, you will hear about it. We will tell you about it. If you haven't heard that, nothing has changed. Play on. No harm, no foul. Just keep going.
Yeah, people look so short-term, Bergs. And I think, in crypto, people are quick to forget. And also people come in at different times in the market. Like, I've seen a lot of newbies and a lot of people that have bought recently panicking because they haven't sort of seen this sort of stuff before. Ultimately, this is very normal for crypto. And, Bitcoin, we just went past this Bitcoin halving. If we look 4 years ago to the last Bitcoin halving, Bitcoin's up 800% since the last Bitcoin halving. It's already up 40% this year. And ultimately, like, just looking at Bitcoin alone, Bitcoin continues to push ahead as this is a hedge against inflation. And yes, it didn't quite play out that way in COVID, but ultimately we're still very early in the development of the asset. And at the end of the day, this is just humans trading this thing. Like, you need to have enough people believe that it actually is that for it to happen. And Bitcoin's outperformed probably what most people consider is the hedge against inflation being gold, right? Like, what's the inflation at the moment? But I mean, the math, the equation they come up for inflation is just bullshit.
Apparently in Australia, it's 4.1%.
Oh, 4%. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Cool. That's why my coffee...
It's more like 20.
That's why my coffee costs $6.50 because it's up 4% from last year.
Yeah, it's why my petrol's $2.20.
Yeah.
And my health insurance has gone up like $1,000 this month.
Exactly, man. That's why you need at least, $500,000 deposit to buy a minimum $1 million property, in Melbourne.
It is ridiculous, mate. Ridiculous. Like, property's going up like 20 grand plus a week, mate. It's crazy.
But it's only 4%, mate.
Only 4%. Don't stress. 4%.
We need to trust the government, man, because we don't trust them, we're in trouble.
Oh my god. I saw this perfect meme, and it was in the context of Bitcoin, but it can be in the context of anything. A guy and a girl are just walking down the street holding hands, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to learn about Bitcoin. It's too hard." And she's like, "Yeah, thinking's hard." And he's like, "Yeah, we'll just trust the government." She's like, "Okay," and they just keep walking.
Isn't that just life, though?
Bro. It is true. You need to choose where you put your cognitive power and what you learn about, but at least do some independent thinking for the things that matter. Like, you work your whole life for money, right? At least understand how money is made, where it's going, and how you can make more of it and invest. I think that's just the basics that people need to learn.
100%. And that, like, if you're holding cash in your bank, you're losing, I think, at least 10%, per year, real true inflation. So Gold has always been seen as this hedge against inflation, right? Gold's only up 7 to 10% year to date in US dollar terms, only up 11% in the last 4 or 5 years in US dollar terms. Not even gold is outpacing inflation, which is crazy, right? So Bitcoin, although volatile, is right now one of the only very few things that I'd consider a genuine hedge against the debasement of currency. And, you look at MicroStrategy, for example, their stock has been flat for 10 years. Like, literally did nothing for 10 years. He starts buying massive amounts of Bitcoin and their stock has just exploded in price.
I listened to Michael Saylor talk about this, and he said it took a lot of education to his company, to his board. And he said, look, we're a small kind of software company. we can continue the way we are. We're on a downward trend, and eventually within the next 10 years, we won't exist. We'll peter out. Or we can take this huge bet if we know we're going to die anyway, and we're going to get outcompeted by bigger software companies. We'll take this bet. It's an asymmetric bet, and this is what we can do. We can use the free cash flow we have to buy Bitcoin, put it in our treasury, become a Bitcoin company, and then the operating expenses for the company can buy more Bitcoin. We can get sophisticated in the way that we actually borrow money and issue debt, and we can accrue more Bitcoin on our balance sheet at a very cheap rate. And it's very sophisticated what he's done, but it has bloody worked. And it is absolutely incredible.
And he hasn't just been buying in the bull market. Like, this guy's been buying and was underwater for a long time. And I think this is a lesson that, you know, we continue to try and promote and talk about, is the fact that human psychology is the thing that you need to understand, because your own brain is sometimes the person you got to fight against. Like, the best buying opportunities for Bitcoin and crypto, in my opinion, and when I've made the best trades, have been when it has felt the worst time to buy. I remember back, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but it was around COVID when Bitcoin plummeted to 6,000 US, and it was sickening. I was like, oh my goodness, like, this thing is like, it is dead, right? You know, God, no one was talking about it. There was zero people on Twitter, zero people just even interested in crypto. And then guess what? It went down to 3,500. It went down another 40%. And then that was like the ultimate like knife into the wound. But being in the space for as long as I have been, and the conviction that we had, was a generational buying opportunity. And I literally put everything I had into Bitcoin at that time. And, you know, not to say I had houses that I was selling, you know, I didn't have a lot of money at that time, but I was like putting as much as I could in, because when 90 or 95% of the market is on one side, it's usually the other side that you need to take to get the asymmetric returns. And that's what's happening right now. People are panicking, people are scared, people are worrying because they don't know what they're doing. A guy messaged me the other day that it was actually a mate of mine, right, that I've known for a little while, that I didn't know this, told me that he lost $40,000 recently because he bought into the market retraced, had a pullback, he panicked, he sold, and then the market bounced and pumped back higher than it was before, and he's lost 40K. I'm like, what are you doing?
So this is crazy. I've had these messages as well. A business owner guy we both know, he's put some money into Bitcoin recently, and he's like, oh man, what's your take on what's happening now? Because Bitcoin was down, I don't know, 15, 20%. And I'm like, bro, it's a gift from the gods, just accumulate. And he was like, man, I should have sold when I was 30% up. I'm like, no, mate, no, this is not a traditional market. We're not going for 30% here.
No.
We're going for multiples here. We're going for generations here.
Isn't that funny that you get the messages like, what do you think, like, what's going on? It's like, nothing, play on, buy more. It's like, nothing's happening. Like, this is like there's literally nothing to talk about. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like, keep calm, carry on. Mate, what about the CEO of Telegram? What a lad. How he's like, I want to stay free. He's got like 99% of his wealth in Bitcoin. So I think he might have a house, and that's it. So he can just travel the world, do what he wants to do, keep his life simple. And I start to think about this. So I've got a primary place of residence. I've got superannuation, shares, crypto. The next investment I'll have is maybe an investment property. But even now, like, I can borrow a lot for investment property, which is good. But I'm like, man, do I want that headache? Things are getting expensive. Do I want to have to look after that thing? The best opportunity for me right now, where it balances out gains plus lack of, you know, I don't have to look after something, is buying Bitcoin. I wouldn't put my money anywhere else. And honestly, the thing you were talking about before, where we think Bitcoin is expensive, I've felt that up until probably a couple of months ago, where even if Bitcoin is 70K and it goes down to 60, like, man, 60 is so expensive. I remember when it was 2. But Bitcoin is always going to feel expensive no matter when you buy. And it doesn't matter, because you're buying the best asset, and it is going to dwarf these prices in the future.
I'll tell you what's expensive, Bergs.
What's this?
Cost of living is expensive.
Oh, bro. Mate, you don't even have like a family or pay rates or do any of that shit. You wait till you have all of that, mate. You're going to be crippled.
So, guys, I literally called up Bergs the other day. I was like, what the actual fuck is going on? Like, I paid so many bills, so much shit, like all this sort of stuff. Look back, and I was like, what the hell just happened? I just dropped like 10 grand on just like life.
Yeah.
And call up Bergs is like, yeah, mate, guess what? why didn't you get a family? Why didn't you have kids? Why didn't you have a mortgage? I'm like, that's normal.
You're like, I just dropped 10K, and I'm like, what'd you buy? And you're like, oh, I just existed.
Like just life, like nothing.
Yeah. Bro, it is so crazy. And yeah, so things are getting more and more expensive. So the reality is that you need to invest, you need to make more money rather than just relying on your income from your job. Like that is what the top 40% of people in terms of wealth do, and the bottom 60% don't do. And that is the separator, where they put their money in, they let it compound over time. And just back to what I was saying about having a retracement in any asset market, if the fundamentals of that asset haven't changed and the price of that asset has gone down, that is a gift. Like you should be accumulating. And it comes back to a quote, and I'm going to read this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's one I've mashed together from Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. Think about what you have been putting off. Dead time is revived when we use it as an opportunity to do what we've long needed to do. Remember how long you have been putting this off, how many times you have been given a period of grace by the gods and not used it. If you do not use it to clear away your clouds, it will be gone, and you will be gone, and the opportunity will not return. And I even apply this to investing, where I'm like, how many opportunities, like I've been in crypto since 2017, how many opportunities am I going to be given to accumulate at an amazing price? This bull market hasn't even kicked off, Ben. Amazing things are going to happen here. A lot of people are going to come in. A lot of money is going to be made. How many times do you get this opportunity?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think it's important to remember where we are in the cycle, and like, you know, knowing where, you know, because I know a lot of our listeners hold altcoins. We hold altcoins, and yes, they're down, you know, quite considerable from their all-time highs. We're still probably a long way away from altcoin season. Like the retail interest is not quite there. You know, altcoin season really comes in like the later phases of a bull market, which I think is probably at least 6 to 12 months away. You know, money tends to rotate from Bitcoin down as they start to take profits. Like if we look at the MVRV ratio, which is one that we like to look at, a collective shift, which is the market value to realized value ratio. This is basically a chart that shows you the amount of unrealized profit Bitcoin holders are in, or unrealized losses. It's a great signal for tops and bottoms, and this is what really helped us buy Bitcoin when it was at 16,000 in December of 2022 near the bottom. We're probably at the moment, in terms of like where we are in a bull market, halfway, I would say, versus halfway through a bull market versus previous cycles of when Bitcoin has started to take profits. And what tends to happen is when this ratio gets to a certain point above sort of 3.3, 3.4, which is hard for listeners to see, but basically once the price of Bitcoin gets to a certain point where there's a lot of people in unrealized profits, they start to take profits, and then money rotates down into altcoins, right? And that's how altcoins start to grow. Usually at the back end of a cycle, they'll start to go really chaotic, mania in the air, people quitting their jobs, plumbers becoming crypto traders, everyone's just going, oh my God, we're going to be millionaires. That is the time to get the hell out. We're nowhere near that yet. And I think that's really important to not over leverage yourself in altcoins too early, because you will bleed to the downside during these corrections. So if you do hold altcoins, either add to your positions or just hold. Don't panic. The market will return, but we need to see a few more things tick off. And I think we're going to see a bit of choppiness sideways for the next little while we've got the uncertainty in the Middle East, while the central bank at the moment is still not like in any sort of quantitative easing. Like we're not seeing lots of money being printed to come into Bitcoin. The ETF demand is there, but it has slowed down. Like I think we're going to be in this, and now the Bitcoin halving event has done and gone. We're now, the market will be looking for the next thing to be excited about, and ultimately there's not that much to be excited about in the short term. So I would expect the market to probably perform relatively poorly in the short term, and that's a good reason just to chill out. Everything's going to be okay. Add to your positions if you have cash on the sidelines, but just don't panic.
Yeah, that's right. The next thing is probably Ethereum ETF in May.
Yeah.
To look forward, that is the next event. Just keep calm, carry on. It's not a massive thing. Like a lot of people get like you get rewarded for a couple of things in crypto. One is diamond hands, you get rewarded for that. And the other one is being able to stomach the pain of investing and not kind of selling. It is another aspect of having diamond hands, but if you can buy good quality tokens and you can hold them for any period of time until you reach your goal, you will be rewarded. The people that are rewarded are the ones that panic sell.
Yeah.
And we're nowhere near that. We're nowhere near that in this cycle. Mate, keep calm and carry on.
100%, man. How I'm playing this, folks, for those that are interested, basically will continue to add to my Bitcoin position continuously like I normally do, and I will do forever. Won't be making any large investments. We made a pretty big ETH investment, about 3,100 in the last correction. If we see a deeper correction of like Bitcoin going into the 50,000s, like 55,000, 50,000, and ETH goes to like, let's say 2,500, 2,300, I think that's going to be a magical buying opportunity. And we'll look to go pretty heavy if we go down to those levels.
Is that a back up the truck scenario, mate?
That's sort of, pick up the keys, dump all the cash you've got, and
sell the Tesla, buy Bitcoin.
Sell the Tesla, get rid of the mattress, back on the floor, back on the ramen noodles, everything back in the market.
So good, mate. So good. And yeah, I just want to touch on gold. I want to rip on Peter Schiff for a little bit. It's a little prick. So all the gold bugs, everyone that followed Peter Schiff, mate, this guy's going on. He got absolutely trounced in this interview by I forget the lady's name, but she was just amazing. She was so factual, didn't do any personal attacks, nothing like that. Peter Schiff comes in, he's like, gold's up $28. This, that. And I'm like, $28 is like 0.6%. You've got a stat here. Like, what is it? Gold has been up 11% in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
That hasn't even beaten inflation. And you've got to think, the guy, like the way that he's like, Bitcoin is down this month, and he's using like intraday percentages to try and validate his point of view. If you look at any decent metric, gold has been trounced by Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin is just a better gold. It is just one of those amazing assets. It is so crazy. So, mate, there's not much out there that is actually beating inflation. What's crazy is the stock market was returning around, let's say, 10%. What's wild is, first of all, that's not beating inflation because it's more than 10%. Even if we look at the numbers, so you have 10%, if it's under a year, you've got 10% more, great. But then you have to pay capital gains on that 10%, which reduces it further. You're not even beating inflation and you've had to pay tax. So although the number you have has gone up, your real purchasing power, even though you're investing, has gone down. Isn't that a kick in the guts, mate?
So, mate, you made 10%. Oh, you want to sell it? Give us 50% of your gains. So now you're only up 5%. Yeah, you're not beating inflation. So you're still down.
Bro, it hurts so bad. It hurts so bad. And this is the thing, like a lot of like my personal wealth has gone up, but the things I can buy, no.
That's so true. It's like property, man. It's like, oh, that's, you bought, and to be fair, properties outpace inflation. But if you want to go buy or sell that house to buy a better house, well, guess what? No, all the other houses have gone up too. It's not like...
Yeah, like if you had enough money in your bank to buy a house 6 months ago, you no longer had that money. Even if you invested that money in something else to buy that house, because property prices have just outpaced everything. It is so crazy.
Oh, dear. The world, eh?
The world. But yeah, this is it. So this is why we go towards an asset class that has really good returns, so we can leapfrog all this bullshit. You're not caught in that hamster wheel of having to work, go to uni for 4 years, then work for 40 years, and then probably not even have a retirement because the government's going to dip into your super. Like, you got to protect your own neck and invest in decent things that have a decent return.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Right, folks, we might wrap it up there. Happy Bitcoin halving day at time of recording. Hopefully that's been helpful to give you a bit of an insight of where we're seeing the market go, where we're putting our money to beat inflation, where we're not putting it, i.e. gold. And not to say gold's not a good investment, just saying that Bitcoin's outperforming it. And yeah, what's going to be happening in the next few months. So hopefully that's been helpful. We'd love for you to share it with a friend if you have anyone that you think would find this episode valuable. It's how we grow the podcast, and we'd really appreciate you helping us out. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, champions.